You won't believe how this cat looks after shaving all these dreadlocks. The cat was very frightened and afraid of people. The unfortunate animal was immediately taken to the veterinarian. According to the veterinarian, the cat suffered from these dreadlocks for at least several years and did not receive proper care. Everyone can relate to having a bad hair day. A cat named Heidi knows all about it. Heidi's bad hair day probably lasted for years. When people found her, she had 2 pounds of matted fur on her back, about the weight of a pineapple or a small bag of rice. An elderly man in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, owned Heidi as well as a Siamese cat named Siam. The man had Alzheimer's disease, and when he'd gotten too ill to live by himself, his family moved him to a nursing home. The cats, unfortunately, got left behind. Paul Russell, a distant relative of the elderly man, was the first to think of the cats. Well, really, one cat. When they put him in the nursing home, I thought, hey, he has a cat, Russell told the dodo. The house was still open, so I went down and left some food for the cat until we figured out what we were going to do. Then somebody mentioned that he had a second cat, so I started searching around, and suddenly this huge creature darts out from underneath the bed and runs down to the cellar, and I thought, what was that? Heidi's fur was so matted that dreadlocks had formed. At first I thought it was a cat who had a blanket draped over her that she'd dragged around, Russell said. But no, it turned out to be Heidi. She hid down in the corner of the cellar. I'm down there with a flashlight looking. It was almost like a horror movie, and I found her hunkering in the corner, probably very scared, probably in a lot of pain. Russell took Heidi, so named for her inclination to hide, to the Animal Rescue League and Wildlife Shelter in Pittsburgh, which is affiliated with the Western PA Humane Society. The vet team was stunned at Heidi's appearance. They hadn't seen anything like that before, Caitlin Lasky, Senior Marketing Communications Manager for Western PA Humane Society, told the dodo. Even looking online, I had a hard time finding anything similar, so it's definitely a unique case. The vet team had to put Heidi under general anesthesia so they could safely shave off her dreadlocks. It was 2 pounds of fur, Lasky said. Lots of fur. It had to be years of matting for it to get that long. She was overweight as well. Well, no one knows exactly how Heidi's fur got this bad. The vet team thinks her weight had a lot to do with it. Heidi was really overweight, so that makes it harder for cats to groom themselves. And that's when you see matting happen, Lasky explained. It also helps to regularly brush cats with long fur, which the elderly man was likely unable to do. Since Heidi was discharged from the vet hospital, she's been staying with Russell and his family, and she's already feeling better. She's been hiding under the bed for the last couple of days, Russell said. I've been dragging her out and holding her, and she purrs a lot. The last couple of days, she's climbed out from under the bed on her own and into a cat bed I have, so she's starting to work her way to see people more. What happened with this poor cat will melt your heart. This Rasta cat was abandoned by its owners with over 2 pounds of dreadlocks on its back. Volunteers from the Radu de Animal Animal Rescue Center saved the male cat after he was ditched in Ferrol in France's Brittany region. The head of the animal center, Dominique Becot, said the cat, called Shamad, also had long tufts of fur he had when he arrived at the refuge. Cats develop the Rasta look when their undercoat sheds and traps itself under the top layer of the fur, in a process known as matting. Most owners focus only on the top layer when grooming their cat and neglect the twisted knots developing beneath. If the matting isn't removed, a hard pelt can develop. A pelt is hardening fur, tightly entangling close to the animal's skin, which can only be removed by shaving. Shamad's fur had developed into a rigid pelt, and volunteers were unable to save the hair by simply brushing it out. Rescuers had to shear the solid tangle of dreads from his back. The poor animal could not even clean itself anymore, to the point that it created impressive tufts, the head of the center, Becot said. She added, we have cut about 2.2 pounds of hair off after it clumped together into dreadlocks. Everything was on its back, where the cat could not lick itself. The other volunteers said they've never seen such an incredible Rasta haircut on a short-haired cat, with one saying, this generally happens to animals with long hair that have been not looked after for a long time. Shamad, who is 9 years old, was promptly taken in by a loving family after losing the locks. The family adopted him and his pal Chad, also 9, who also needed to have some sprouting dreads removed by volunteers. Rope-like dreads develop on a cat's back when they go through processes known as matting and pelting. Matting happens when the cat's undercoat sheds and gets trapped under the top layer of fur. Felines who aren't regularly cleaned can also quickly develop the Rasta look when oily skin and dirty fur builds up. If the matting isn't properly brushed out, a hardened knot will form close to the skin. This is known as a pelt. Pelts can't be combed out and always need to be removed by shearing the feline.